Good evening. This is Perrysburg City Council for August 16, 2022. Please call the roll.
Mr. Fuller.
Here.
Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Ms. Materney. Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Van Duzen.
Here.
Mr. Weber.
Here. If you're able, please join me in standing and sing the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consideration of minutes of council from July 19th.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and everything is a drop of pen for everything everywhere. I believe everyone has received a copy of those meeting minutes. If no one has any objections, I would consider the council meeting minutes of July 19th of 2022 approved.
No objections. Thank you. We have no special reports today. Letters, communications, citizen concerns. If there's any citizen who has a concern, not otherwise covered by an agenda item.
Hello, everyone. I have a question for you. I was looking on
Deborah, would you mind?
Deborah Bourne, 125 East Front Street, Perrysburg, Ohio. I think you all know that. On ordinance 45 on the fire loss claims fund, I looked at ORC 5705, and I believe that refers to levies, and I'm wondering, are we planning on having a levy on the ballot?
No.
How are we going to be coming up with the funds for the fire loss then?
May I answer what this fund is?
Yeah, sure.
This is not a fund that the city puts money into. This is a fund that is created so when there are fires that occur in the city of Perrysburg, the insurance company has to give a portion to the city so that we ensure that those fires are cleaned up properly. Once they are cleaned up properly, those funds are returned. But this is not something we're putting money into. It's simply a fund where we hold money almost in escrow to ensure that there's cleanup after a fire.
Okay, I was just wondering because when you look up ORC, it refers to levies. That's why I was wondering if that's what that was.
No.
We do not anticipate a levy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Administrative reports. We have some honored guests this evening. The Mercy Health has been a big, done a lot in the last year to address public health issues and has really stepped up both on behalf of the city and on behalf of the community. And we have some people here today. I'll let them introduce themselves at some point, but I have a proclamation on behalf of the city of Perrysburg to recognize their service and their commitment to health. So I will save everyone from all the whereases, but I'll read just a couple. Whereas June 2022 marks the 1-year anniversary since the vaccination campaign between Mercy Health, Perrysburg Hospital, and the city of Perrysburg, contributing a joint effort to keep our community safe. Whereas vaccines, preventable disease still circulate in the United States and around the world, so continuing vaccination is necessary to protect everyone from potential outbreak. Sorry about that, it's my daughter, she's trying to buy a car. Let me call you right back, please. Whereas we commend Mercy Health, Perrysburg Hospital for its contribution to our community in promoting the highest quality medical care, stringent medical ethics, and their unwavering sympathy, compassion, and selfless dedication in caring for the members of our community. Now, therefore, I, Thomas G. Mackin, the Mayor of Perrysburg, do hereby encourage the citizens of Perrysburg to educate themselves on vaccination, making it a priority, and to take cognizance of the events and participate appropriately in observance of Immunization Awareness Month. So on behalf of the city of Perrysburg, I'm proud to present this proclamation. So if you want to come up here. I'll let you introduce yourselves before.
Hello, I'm Phil Nelson. I'm the pharmacy director over at Mercy Health Perrysburg Hospital.
I thank the council for this honor. Really is. I'm Jim Widener, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Mercy Toledo, and I have responsibility of 4 hospitals: St. Vincent, St. Anne's, St. Charles, and Perrysburg. But most importantly, I'm a citizen of Perrysburg, and while the vaccinations were being administered to our neighbors, I was acting an interim president of Perrysburg. So I had the privilege to meet, 11,600 of our community members. And so again, thank you very much for this honor.
And I'll correct you, it was 11,796. I'm Julie Allen, I'm the Director of Nursing out at the Perrysburg Hospital.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrea Gwynn. I'm the President of Mercy Health Perrysburg Hospital.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Sipper. I'm Vice President of Business Development and Advocacy. And just to build on what Jim said, so we're very grateful for this, very honored for this, so thank you. Just want to point out that the model that we created with the help of your police chief, your fire chief, the mayor, his team, was really what helped us get us through this whole process. It is the new model on how we work together, on how we literally focus on public health. It's being copied all over the place right now, and it's incredible. And it's just really a tribute to how we can work together to focus our resources and do what the community needs. So thank you very much.
Always listen to the nurses, the main point. Congratulations, Russ. Come up,
Thank you, Mayor.
Come on up and look at a couple pictures. Big shot. Good to see you. Good to see you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Mayor.
I expect to see that next time.
Absolutely.
I go to the emergency
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
We hope
I'd like to say
at the hospital, but thank you for your support.
my wife and I were 2 of the 11,796. The whole process during that terrible first year just was so streamlined over there at Mercy. We made it a good experience for us. So really appreciate that, and we can really very noticeable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have 2 other items. Can we do these together?
I don't have an issue with that.
I would like to recommend Megan Wolfinger for the Planning Commission, and Judy Hagan, who's here. I'm glad that she wanted to volunteer her services, so we appreciate that very much, to the Citizens Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee.
Do you have any objections if we make Ms. Hagan's appointment lifetime? I will make a motion to appoint Ms. Wolfinger and Ms. Hagan to the respective boards.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller? Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Judy.
I have nothing else. City Administrator.
Excuse me, Mayor. Are we past the public comment? We skipped over to the Mercy, or are we going back around to that?
I can come back. We can just go ahead. Go ahead. If you, no, that's fine. If you, is it something about particular ordinance or?
No, it's regarding the dog park.
Oh, come on up. Introduce yourself, name and address, and hopefully 3 minutes or so.
Yep. My name's Jackie Kyle. I live at 235 Southwood Drive. I was able to speak before the rec committee last week regarding my opposition to the dog park. I've had some additional thought, had some additional contact with my neighbors and friends since that time. I kind of want to address the survey that you put out. I feel like the cart sort of went out before the horse on this one. First 5 questions of the survey are good. After that, you're asking for location preference, and then we give a price breakdown. The comments I'm seeing on social media are, put it at Bicentennial, it's the cheapest. Well, cheapest isn't always the best. And my opposition in particular is to Bicentennial and Three Meadows. I don't believe a dog park has any business in those neighborhoods. You're adding parking to already crowded neighborhoods. You're bringing loud noise into neighborhoods that are surrounded by houses. What I've asked those that I've spoken to that either don't have an opinion or haven't given it much thought because it doesn't affect them, would you want it in your backyard? The answers I'm getting is no. No, I wouldn't take my dog to a dog park. We don't need a dog park. And that's what I think hasn't been established here. We have this survey out with all these questions, but is it needed? I think it's a want, and other people are asking, should the taxpayers foot the bill for this if it were to go forward? What I'm asking is that you take Bicentennial and Three Meadows off of your list altogether. You know, there's lots of people that I run into daily as I'm walking at Bicentennial. I've probably talked to 100+ people who absolutely do not want this. So, you know, there's many people that plan on attending future meetings. We just want our voices to be heard, and want you to consider that the dog park may not be the best thing for Perrysburg. You know, most of our housing here is single housing, not apartment complexes. If it's the demographic that's asking for it are those, then maybe they should go to their, you know, landlords and ask them to put something in. So I'm just asking that Bicentennial and Three Meadows be taken off. And ideally, I'd love to see no dog park, because I don't think it's going to bring a benefit to our community, but that's the points I'd like to make.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate you coming in and giving us your input.
Yes,
Very
thank you
much.
for your time. I think there was one other person.
Do you want to come up and say ditto?
My name is Tanya Schneider. I live at 234 Margaret Place in Perrysburg. I use the park Bicentennial almost every day. I walk through there with my dogs, and I just don't, I agree with Jackie. It's just, I don't see it something that we should have in Perrysburg, in the city at least, and I don't think it should be funded by taxpayer money. I would also want it to be considered to have Bicentennial and Three Meadows off of the choices, and just look forward to staying connected and you know, just staying on top of how this proceeds in the future, but also just don't agree with it. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you. I would say make sure that we get your information or email us, so we can make sure that if there is going to be on the agenda, that you're given some notice of heads up about
That'd
it.
be great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
We appreciate you coming and speaking, and we appreciate you being here, brother. I have two motions that was about to start. Megan Wolfinger, did we vote on those?
We did that.
We did those. All right, sorry, my bad.
If you want to do it again, we can do it again.
No, that's all right.
More time we can bring that.
More time we
second up, the better.
validate how valuable Judy is, the more better.
That's another term.
City Administrator's report.
I just have one item. We are live streaming this on YouTube right now, so Charles and Cole, we got done. So we'll see how this goes. We still have some bumps to perfect in the system, but we're learning as we go, so we're moving forward.
Great news, thank you.
Is it YouTube, Bridget, or does it just go to our website? It goes to YouTube. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry? Just the website, yeah. Oh, okay, I'm staying corrected. Shows you I was not in the trainings.
Finance Director.
I would just like to say that we have started the budget. We've met with most departments, so we're kind of gathering everything. So that should be coming your way September, October.
Amber, I'll let you know that people noticed that our new budget was online, so I appreciate you getting that up there.
No report till we go live, and then she's got a report.
Yeah, interesting. I've never had a report before.
Just kidding. Law Director.
Yes, I do have one item. The Wood County Commissioners have sent us a document in which the Schroders are requesting annexation of 6 parcels along the river into the city of Perrysburg. Before the county commissioners can make a decision, they need a yay or a nay of consent or denial from the city of Perrysburg. So I drafted a resolution for all of you to review. It's in your packet regarding this. My recommendation, my legal recommendation is to recommend this annexation. We can provide the services, we can provide the water and the other services, and if it's private property, we can provide the trash pickup. I don't think it's on this way, but Rob just wanted me to be clear in this, that if it were apartments, we don't do trash pickup for apartments. So he just wanted to make sure that that was understood in this discussion. So my recommendation, legal recommendation to all of you would be to vote in consent of this annexation. They've requested in the past. We have not responded previously because if you look at the subject parcels 1 through 6, number 6 is a large parcel along the river, and they have left that one out in previous requests. We wanted the entire thing. We didn't want these weird little blocks, islands of non-city land between city land and the river. So when they requested with all 6 parcels this time, it's now my recommendation that you consent. And I will need somebody to move this forward if you all want to.
I'll make a motion. I would like to introduce Resolution 72, 2022, and move the rules be suspended to allow first reading by number and title only, dispense with the second and third reading.
Second.
Discussion?
I guess
Well,
let's.
it's not discussion, we're just introducing.
All right, roll call.
Mr. Fuller,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Duzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Resolution 72, 2022, consenting to the petition of Schroeder Company agent Bradley Law for annexation into the city.
All right, I move that Resolution 72, 2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion.
I guess what's the anticipated zoning, do we know?
It will come in as it's zoned now, which I believe is single
Single family.
family. And then that will be a determination, a recommendation from planning and zoning to the planning commission and then to all of you, just like occurred today. But the temporary zoning will be what it is.
And given the parcels.
And given the parcel, I have not heard anything other than single family.
Given the location.
Yeah.
But this includes a campground, doesn't it?
It does, and one of the things that will be a discussion at some point will be what is and is not permitted in the city of Perrysburg along the river in that sense, which is why we didn't want that parcel separated so that Perrysburg property was backing up to something that Perrysburg didn't want in its city.
And we have nothing currently on our code that pertains to campgrounds, I think.
If we do, we don't have anything zoned that way to the best of my knowledge.
So this,
So I believe that parcel would come in zone single family as well.
And it actually might be agricultural right
Might
now
be,
because it's
that's
sitting in a
down.
floodplain.
That person
And
may
it
be
is
a
farm,
cultural.
it used to be farm.
Do we know the reason behind the annexation?
I've had conversations with the property owner. They're looking, the last time, to put single-family homes as well as a required retention area up along 65, fronting 65.
Okay. Is it, I think they've had a sign that has lots for sale. Is that
Correct,
that's
yes.
it,
Yes.
right? Okay.
This is also consistent with the 99-year agreement.
Okay. Perfect. That answers mine.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Duzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber,
Yes.
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Thank you. President of Council.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report.
All right, we'll start the committee reports, Finance and Economic Development.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Finance and Economic Development Committee met August 9th, 2022. The meeting was called to order at 5:33 p.m. by Chairman Mark Weber. Committee members present were myself, Tim McCarthy, and Jonathan Smith. Also present were Amber Rathburn, Finance Director, and Kayla Trago, Deputy Finance Director. There were no objections to the minutes of July 12th meeting, so they were approved 3-0. A request to establish a new fire loss claims fund. Ms. Rathburn explained that this is a request to set up another fund to separate receipts of fire bonds. If there is a fire within the city and there is 60% loss of the insured value, the insurance company is required to provide the city a deposit of $2,000 for every $15,000 of value of the loss. This bond is held until the fire is cleaned up. Mr. Smith asked how it works if someone does not have insurance. Ms. Rathburn stated that this portion is all through the insurance company and added that the city has the ability to assess a lien on a property if it needs to be demoed for safety. There being no objections, the committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. A request to declare surplus and auction 4 items from the Department of Public Service. Ms. Rathburn explained that the Department of Public Service has 2 Toro mowers, 1 dump truck, and 1 F-350 truck that they would like to surplus. Ms. Trago will post the items to the Gov Deals website for auction. Mr. Smith asked about putting minimum bids on the items. Ms. Trago stated that they can set minimums on items and that for vehicles we always would. There being no objections, the committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. The approval of the then and now purchases, Ms. Rathburn explained that the items listed were over $3,000 and did not have a purchase order set up before the purchase was made. Previously, purchase orders were not required for some of these items, so it's a learning curve for departments. There being no objections, the committee agreed 3-0 to recommend to City Council. In the Finance Director's report, I asked about Phoenix Services. Ms. Rathburn explained that it is the labor for the parks. I also asked about commercial mowing on the ditch banks. Ms. Rathburn explained that she thought this was more for brush removal rather than just grass, and Mr. Smith stated he is aware that we contract out for cleaning the ditches. Ms. Rathburn stated that the health insurance fund is doing well and she is currently not expecting any big claims. Mr. McCarthy asked if at some point would they refigure employee contributions if the fund is large enough. Ms. Rathburn explained that every year they look at the balance and the expected expenditures and then adjust both city and employee contribution rates. Ms. Rathburn updated the committee on the income tax receipts. There was no other business, and the meeting was adjourned at 5:50 p.m. Now I have 3 pieces of legislation. I would like to introduce Resolution 65-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 65, 2022, a resolution declaring 1 2006 Toro 3 mower, 1 1999 Toro 2 mower, 1 2003 Sterling Actera dump truck, and 1 1994 Ford F-350 truck currently used in the Department of Public Service, no longer needed for public use or unfit for public service.
I move that Resolution 65-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce Resolution 66-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
A roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 66, 2022, a resolution to approve then and now certificates in the amount of $22,613.73 as attached in Exhibit A for the city of Perrysburg and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 66-2022 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Finally, I'd like to introduce Ordinance 45-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 45, 2022, authorizing all actions necessary to establish a fire loss claims fund.
I move that Ordinance 45-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
The next Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting is Tuesday, September 13th at 5:30 p.m. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Safety Committee met on July 26th, and the meeting was called to order at 6 p.m. Committee members present were Barry Van Huzen, Mark Weber, and Dan Materney. Also present were Bridget Cabot, City Administrator Patrick Jones, Police Chief, and Brian Thomas, City Engineer. The minutes were approved from the April 26th meeting. July 3rd fireworks and state code. Ms. Cabot stated that the mayor's office received more emails, calls, and texts about fireworks than ever before. Chief Jones reviewed the aspects of the ORC with the committee members. Ms. Cabot added that this is the first event privately displayed fireworks were allowed under the new code. Chief Jones stated that people live close to each other, so he sees and understands the concerns of citizens. He reminded the committee members that there are still enforcement mechanisms in place for him and his officers, and that they can still enforce the noise ordinance if necessary. Ms. Materni stated that she does not like fireworks because of the potential damage done is not confined just to the property of those shooting off fireworks. Ms. Cabot stated that the administration does not have a recommendation that can keep this committee informed as more holidays occur where fireworks are now allowed. Mr. Attorney prefers that we opt out. Mr. Van Huzen and Mr. Weber agreed that we can keep an eye on it, along with the incidents reported, and to give it time. Ms. Cabot suggested to wait 1 year and go through all the holidays before making a decision, and the mayor wanted the safety committee to be aware. Parking on Walnut Street. Ms. Cabot stated that they are back to the drawing board for the intersection of 3rd Street and Walnut Street. Mr. Thomas stated that plans were submitted for parking, denied, and then died off. He added that there were not approved plans because the information was missing. Mr. Thomas stated that he does not recommend moving the stop sign up closer to 3rd, and that the cash basin is eventually going to fail. The idea is to have angled parking and to make that part of the 3rd Street one-way street. There was a discussion amongst the committee members and administration on the placement of the stop sign. Mr. Van Huzen stated that you essentially have to stop twice. Once at the stop sign for the crosswalk, and the second time that is clear that you can ensure no cars are coming on Walnut Street. Chief Jones stated that there has been one accident there. Mr. Thomas added that statistically there will be more if that area is paved and parking is allowed. Mr. Van Huzen thanked Mr. Thomas for the explanation and costs. Elm Street and 3rd Street intersections. Barbara Wilch, 201 East-South Boundary Street, is requesting that the city allow golf carts, as well as having public education on what crosswalks mean and who has the right of way. Ms. Cabot stated that the administration does not recommend they modify the code to allow underspeed vehicles. Chief Jones explained to the committee what low-speed vehicles versus underspeed vehicles are. Ms. Wilch added that golf carts are battery operated, have many advantages, and that they are good for the communities. Chief Jones stated that this is a safety concern with vehicles titled as an underspeed vehicle, especially being surrounded by many higher speed roads. Under other business, Mr. Weber brought up the crossing in the school zone on Louisiana Avenue. Ms. Cabot mentioned the active transportation plan. Mr. Weber wanted to see flashing yellow lights at this intersection. Ms. Materni also mentioned school zone crossing on Finley Street. Mr. Weber stated that Louisiana is more of an issue with a higher speed limit on that road. Ms. Materni agreed that both crossings are a problem. Ms. Cabot stated that this is back on the radar. Mr. Van Huzen requested that they enter executive session for employment purposes, seconded by Ms. Weber. The committee entered executive session at 7:18. Upon return at 7:30, we adjourned the executive session. I do not have any resolutions. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, if needed, on August 23rd at 6 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Recreation Committee?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a copy of the report here. We met on August 9th, 2022 at 6:34 p.m. By myself, Jonathan Smith, committee members present were Barry Van Huzen and Corey Coleman. Also present was Bridget Cabot, city administrator. Citizens concerned, we had Leah Ponce show up to discuss the bike path along the side of Love's Common and ask for a copy of it. Hopefully, Ms. Cabot, I think you mentioned you would send a copy over to her once that is available. We heard from Ms. Jackie Kyle, as we all heard tonight as well. She was in attendance to express her concerns about the dog park because they're not a good thing for the community. She spends a lot of time training her dogs, and the environment of dog parks does not support that. Bicentennial Park has no parking and is a family park, whereas dog parks are very loud. She asked how this would be funded. Mr. Smith explained that we are more in exploratory phase and have not yet set aside funds. Ms. Kyle added later in the meeting that the survey would be skewed with those that do not have a yard space for their dogs. She is curious if the next survey could zero in on people asking for the dog park itself. What their living situation is, if they're a homeowner or live in apartments wanting green space for their pets. She is opposed to dog parks for many reasons. Vicki of Running Brook was unsure why Bicentennial Park was on the survey and does not understand why it is on the survey because it's a neighborhood park. She explained that there used to be baseball practice in the park and that it was a mess with littering and those practicing walking through their backyards to get to the park. Mr. Coleman said that he requested to be included due to the being centrally located within the city. Mr. Coleman added that the city is trying to give different options and to get public input. Mr. Coleman reminded everyone to please put all their thoughts onto the survey. Mr. Smith added that Pratt had knocked the bicentennial option out and recommended Three Meadows or Orleans for the dog park. Carrie of Running Brook stated that her and her family use Bicentennial Park often. She said that she loves dogs, but to please not put a dog park there. She stated that many people are voting for Bicentennial because it's the cheapest option, but the cheapest is not always the best. Ms. White added to please not put this in her backyard. Tricia of Brookfield Lane is advocating to not put the dog park in Three Meadows. She does not take her dogs to dog parks because people do not train their dogs properly. Mr. Rum stated that they have a big concern with parking, that the dog park were to go there in Three Meadows, and that the parking lots are crowded already. Mr. Rum stated that she used to live in Cincinnati and the dog park fights would happen all the time. She said the police would have to manage the dog park and they probably have better things to do. Dog parks are allowed and they should be away from residential areas. She had they bought their home because Three Meadows is a quiet park. Mr. Rum stated the city should be put into the plan for Orleans Park, to make it a bigger, better park. Tanya, read through too quickly, who we also heard from tonight, she showed up as well, and she also does not agree with the dog park period. She said that even if additional parking was added to Bicentennial Park, the neighborhood has small streets. It would not be wise for the neighborhoods surrounding the park. Ms. Snyder added that this would be beneficial in the larger cities. She has 2 rescue dogs, and they would not use the dog park due to safety issues, as well as their irresponsible pet owners. Ruth Lucius of Otiki Drive came and spoke about asking about what the issue is with Orleans Park. Mr. Smith said the issue is with people getting in and out. Mr. Smith asked Ms. Cabot about the ingress and egress to Orleans Park. Ms. Cabot stated there is a traffic study for Orleans Park area, and they will meet soon to receive some preliminary information. Ms. Lucius stated that through her research, most successful dog parks are privately funded, and that people pay to use the park showing proof of vaccinations and a license. Of the 3, she stated that Orleans is the best because most sounds would be muffled by traffic. There's plenty of parking and is not around any homes. Mr. Smith appreciates everyone coming out and stated that this will be an ongoing conversation. The approval of the prior month's meetings, 1 through 5. The mayor's appointment of Ms. Hagan was discussed and unanimously agreed to, as well as unanimously voted on today. So I'm going to keep mentioning it today. We had a discussion about the playground maintenance. Ms. Cabot explained that several Department of Public Service workers do monthly inspections of each playground to catalog what is broken or missing. They do their best to keep the pieces of equipment in service and safe. Ms. Cabot added that the Occupational Health and Safety Coordinator is doing a biannual review of, is it biannual or biennial?
Biannual.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's twice. Okay.
Correct.
Of the playground season inspection form, Ms. Cabot added that they are excited to have the Ohio Occupational Health and Safety Coordinator on board, and that he is looking out for the best interest of the city and the residents' use of the park. Mr. Smith added that we should have a life cycle plan for the park equipment so that it's not a substantial chunk at one time. Ms. Cabot also added that they could set aside money each year to build up on a project fund specifically for future playground equipment replacement. Mr. Kuhlman asked if we could get a safety or equipment checklist for the playground equipment replacement so the staff is familiar with it and identifying specific issues. Mr. Coolman added that the city has been fortunate to have a lot of donations for parkland and equipment. He stated the city should be able to take on the role if the giving ever stops, so that the city still has nice equipment that is well maintained. Next item, we had a conversation regarding PrAC. Mr. Smith stated that PrAC is unsure of their specific role. Members of PrAC have indicated that they would like to have a better understanding of their purpose and become even more involved with the recreational aspect of the community. Will Harbaugh, chairperson of PrAC, stated that PrAC members would like to be involved early in the process, such as designing more concepts. Mr. Smith suggests increasing the frequency of PrAC meetings. Mr. Smith also suggested a uniform checklist for all members of PrAC to report back to the city. Mr. Van Hoosen asked if PrAC made a recommendation for the dog park. Mr. Harbaugh stated that he recommended 3 meadows in Orleans, but not bicentennial. Mr. Harbaugh recommended that they update what they are supposed to do or redefine their advisory role. Mr. Coolman would love to see a recommendation from PrAC and what they would like to see PrAC grow into. And Mr. Van Hoosen added that they value their advice and would love their ideas as well. There being no further business, we adjourn at 7:44 p.m. with the next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 13th at 6:30 p.m. And most likely we'll probably have dog parks on the agenda. This will have the some of the survey results back. So that way, we'll still send an email to remind you, but at least you have an idea. So.
Thank you.
So, end of my report.
One question, Tom.
Yeah.
Where are we on this dog park issue? The premise seems to be that we have decided to have a dog park. And we might have put money in the budget for that purpose if we chose, but have we made a decision to even have one?
Nothing's been decided. The whole concept kind of came up as well in the Orleans master plan. So that is part of that process as well. And as part of the conversation, we were having Brecca a few months ago. We asked for some PrAC input to kind of get their ideas on what their thoughts are. They've also reviewed the Orleans master plan at their last meeting. A couple of members have been involved with that process as well. So it's more of a look to see what the appetite is, if there is an appetite. I know that the question isn't necessarily saying yes or no on that, but we're looking to get feedback from the community instead of getting to the point of, all right, we're ready to move forward with it. Now, what does the community want? Let's see if we do end up moving forward with it down the road. Is Orleans the best option, or is there someplace else that the residents are looking for?
And we've got an online survey apparently available for you to take. And I think you mentioned last meeting, we've got someone down at the farmer's market doing kind of a live poll.
Yes, our public information officer, I think, was there either last week or going to be there this week. And they'll have hard copy surveys so people can take them and then turn them into her, and she'll add them then to the analytics of the online survey.
But we understand it is not a scientific survey or scientific board that's going to get the cross-section of the entire community. It was developed with PrAC and the rec committee. The administration's made no recommendation about whether we have dog park, and we have it included as part of the master plan for Orleans Park when we get that.
Okay.
So this is more of if this is something that gets in the community's discussion, some involvement to see if this is something we want to continue to move forward with. But nothing's set in stone by any means on moving forward with it at this point. So
we'll be talking about it further because this has been talked about for 10 or 15 years.
It comes up every couple of years.
I've never really been fully convinced or maybe partially convinced that a dog park is necessary. We'll have that conversation as this all proceeds, I take it.
No, so it's just something to explore, to look into, to see what community discussions are, what everyone's thinking. And so far, the feedback's been pretty overwhelming on either for it or against it, but it's great to hear from everyone on this, to get some input on this, to see if this is something, because it does come up every year or two. I think that before the pandemic, I had a call from an individual who wanted to come and talk about it. Obviously, things got shut down for a while. I know we've had Ruth come a few times to talk about it. We've had other members of the community come with a petition signed, saying we would love to see something on this to explore it. So I think it's good to explore and look into it and see if this is going to be the best use of the recreation. So.
Fair enough.
And I think Jackie sent us all an article. It's an interesting read, whether you're for or against dog parks. I think it's just it's a unique perspective from professionals that I had never heard from. So
Thank you.
I'd encourage all council to give that a gander while we're looking at it.
End of my report.
Thank you. Personnel?
Yeah, I have a report for you. We had a meeting on July 26th. Present were myself and committee members Tim McCarthy and Kevin Fuller. Also present were Richard Cabot and Kelly Shelton. There were no citizen concerns and the prior month's minutes were approved. Then we talked about the legislation to change section 266.11-1, section B. I asked if the recommendation is to change any 12-month period to calendar year. Ms. Cabot answered that yes, based on past practice, this would be the administration's recommendation. Mr. Coleman suggested that they added the 7% to 5%. Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Coleman agreed that they can go above 5%, they just have to come before council and justify why more than 5% is being requested. Mr. Coleman stated that they are requesting an amendment to 5% and keep any 12-month period, which is the equivalent to the preceding 12 months. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. Parental leave discussion. Ms. Cabot stated that they can speak with their health insurance broker on this matter further. Mr. Coleman stated that he wants to see us treat families of our staff well. Mr. Coleman stated that the city should choose to provide prenatal health care, maternity, paternity leave, daycare, and savings accounts with pre-tax dollars. Yet it is important that we provide for our own employees and that just because we are saving money does not mean it's the right thing to do. Ms. Chalfant added that the problem with the savings account in general is having a minimum number of employees participate in the program. Brief discussion on the deputy city administrator. Ms. Cabot stated that every city council member has set up meeting with the consultants. This will be kept on the agenda for the next personnel committee meeting. And then there was no other business, so we adjourned. I do have one piece of legislation tonight. So with that, I'd like to introduce ordinance 46-2022 and move that the rule be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Ordinance 46, 2022, amending codified ordinance 266.11-1B, classifications and rates of pay of the City of Perrysburg Administration Code, codified by ordinance 260, 2006, and passed on December 19, 2006.
Okay, I move that ordinance 46-2022 be passed.
Second.
Discussion. Just points of clarification. The only thing we did is take the pay raises and move it from 7%. I had a discussion with the mayor on this, and we seem supportive of that. Moving it from 7%, we really couldn't trace back to why that was the number, and it brought it down to 5%. So anything above 5%.
Just to be clear, the mayor recommended it stay. We understood the council's request, explained why he remembered the 7% was originally identified, and recommended that it be an amount like 6%, because 5% was pretty standard, but the council's going to go to 5%. I don't have a big objection to that. I don't think we've done anything that hasn't been justified, but just to be clear, I did explain why it was originally 7%.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And then for the any 12-month period, that is remaining unchanged with the understanding that we're all on the same page that a 12-month period is a period of reflection. So within a 12-month period, there shouldn't be two raises within that 12-month period. So it would go by the date that the raise took effect was our interpretation. It seems like we're all on the same page with that now. So.
And that's where, I mean, that doesn't keep employees from getting 7%, they just want to come to council. We just get council just can approve that other 2%. Just to be clear, right?
Or a 10% or
whatever that is.
Whatever it is.
Anything above 5.
Yeah, it would just be in a public meeting before council's approval.
Okay.
I think that's out of the
End of discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Thank you. Public utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Call meeting to order, Public Utilities Committee of July 27, 2022 at 6:32 p.m. Committee members present, myself, Jam Attorney, and Jonathan Smith, and also present are Bridget Kansas, City Administrator, Matt Kilman, Director of Public Utilities. There were no citizens' concerns outside of the standing water, which are reported on here shortly. No objections to the approval of the prior month's meeting minutes. There were no sewer credits, tabulation. Under the standing water and overflow in the Grassy Creek area, Kathleen Smith of Hazen and Sawyer presented a summary of Grassy Creek Stormwater Master Plan to the committee, administration, and concerned citizens. The key project drivers include flooding complaints, topography, neighborhood design, and Grassy Creek capacity. Scott King of Walnut Street wanted to know the difference between available and unavailable record drawings. As Kathleen Smith explained, that plans are developed to build something, and once it is built, elevations are captured in record drawings. Jim Dollar of West South Boundary Street and 917 Pine said that the sanitary sewer in his backyard will fill up after a few days of rain. Mr. Smith explained that it is something the city is still trying to work on. Ms. Cabot stated that there could be drainage or utility easements. I had stated that it is a compound issue with the stormwater and the sanitary. Ms. Cabot added that sanitary is with a different consultant, so they will address that at another time. Mr. Leggett of Maple Street stated that Ms. Smith's presentation is misleading because on Maple Street there are no open catch basins. The storm sewer is only sanitary. Mr. Attorney asked if the study is based on 10 years of average storms and if we are seeing them happen more frequency. Ms. Smith stated with climate change, some areas are seeing more frequent, more intense storms. Ms. Smith went through the different alternatives that they ran through the model. These alternatives include storm sewers in the right-of-way and underground storage, storm sewers in the right-of-way plus sewers for backyard drainage and piping to the Maumee River and bioretention. Recommendations are to address concerns for Grassy Creek, phased implementation of backyard drainage taps. Mr. Smith was curious about extending the piping directly to the Maumee River and what the cost is. Ms. Kathleen Smith stated that there would be private property access issues. She added that it is a possibility, but they did not look at it from a cost standpoint. Mr. Smith wanted a suggestion on how we could get access property to clean Grassy Creek. Ms. Smith stated that the city's legal department would have to look into that. We could also contact citizens, get permission from them directly. Ms. Cabot added that there was a clean stream event through the service department. Scott King Walnut Street asked about the sewer drains that are hooked into the storm drains and if they could expect the city to bring that up to code. And Mr. Smith said that none of them should be connected. Ms. Cabot added that the storm sewer separation project was completed in 2017. Paul Smithers of Locust Street stated that he had been living there for 55 years. The water in his yard sits until it soaks into the yard and that there is no runoff on his property. He suggested running a bulb in between Locust Street and Elm Street, connecting down to Grassy Creek. Mr. Smithers added that anything they could do would help. George Brenner of Maple Street mentioned that in the ditch that runs into Simmons Pond, be utilized as a retention area temporarily. Water could be diverted there as an overflow, he added. Mr. Smith stated that they would have to go through the federal government when there are strict regulations, but it doesn't hurt to look into it. Mr. Smith added that there are some bottleneck issues in Grassy Creek, and the city's first step would be to get the flow going to determine the next steps. Mr. Reddick of Maple Street stated that he appreciates this meeting being held and appreciates committee members bringing up the worst case scenarios. He also appreciates knowing where they are and where things could go. Mr. Smith explained that the integrated plan would answer a lot of cost-benefit questions that Mr. Reddick has. Mr. Smith suggested the first step is to work on Grassy Creek, to talk to the law director, and talk with the residents that have part of Grassy Creek on their property. Ms. Materney agrees with say that we have to have a comprehensive plan and cannot do this piecemeal. Ms. Lenz, on behalf of her parents at Maple Street, stated that they have lived there for over 50 years and she remembers the flooding as a kid. There will be weeks or months the grass cannot be mowed because of the standing water. Her parents have called and complained to the city for years. Ms. Lenz added that after a rainfall, there are parts of the sidewalks, street that you can walk on because they are flooded. Ms. Ms. Fisher of Maple Street stated that she has had standing water in her front yard and backyard, and that it gets worse every year. Ms. Fisher stated that in the years past, she was told a solution was not in the budget. Mosquitoes are also an issue, she added. Ms. Hoffman of Maple Street said that young families moving in with kids are having to play in the street because they can't use the yard. I say that I understand the frustrations and not intend to brush this off, and that the city council needs to adopt a plan and move forward with something. I thank everyone for coming out, and we'll stay, I plan to keep that on the agenda as we move forward in the right direction. Moving on to permission to purchase the UV disinfection equipment. Mr. Coma explained that the Department of Public Utilities would like to purchase new equipment involved in wastewater treatment. This will be purchased through Trojan Technologies, and that this is most beneficial to the city and operation of the plant. I had asked about the life expectancy. Mr. Coma explained that there would be additional costs down the road and that this is not a one-time purchase. There being no objections, the committee agreed to recommend this to City Council. Or the Feller Finch contract amendment, Mr. Coma explained that they are seeking to amend a contract with Feller Finch rather than replacing a single segment. They looked into what it would take to replace the segment from Elm Street to Hickory Street. The total fee for this project is $29,500. Mr. Smith noted that this was going from 18 inches to 8 inches and wanted to be sure it would not affect anything at all. Mr. Coma confirmed that it would not, and that the 8 inches is plenty to handle the flow. Feller Finch will complete the design and engineering department will put it out for bid. There being no objections, the committee agreed to move this forward to City Council. Permission to purchase water meters for public utilities. Mr. Coma explained that with all the growth and with aging systems, the city has to replace water meters. They are looking to replenish the used inventory. Mr. Coma hopes to keep 100 meters in stock for the foreseeable future. Mr. Smith asked if they have the storage capabilities. Mr. Coma answered yes, and they're actually turning one of their garage bays into a stock area. There were no objections, and the committee agreed to move this forward to City Council. Under other business, Mr. Smith asked about the ditch along Cemetery because it came up during a cemetery board meeting. Ms. Cabot explained that the ditch is not in the city right of way and is on cemetery property. There was no further business, and that meeting adjourned at 8:51 p.m. I do have a few pieces of legislation. I'd like to introduce Resolution 67-2022, move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 67, 2022. A resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Neptune Technology Group, Inc. for the purchase of new water meters and remotes for the Department of Public Utilities and the amount not to exceed $46,700 and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 67-2022 be passed as an emergency measure. Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
I would like to introduce Resolution 68-2022 and move that the rule be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 68, 2022, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Feller Finch for the sanitary sewer improvement on 3rd Street and an amount not to exceed $29,500 and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 68-2022 be passed as an emergency measure. Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes. I'd like to introduce Resolution 69-2022 and move that the rules be suspended and allow for its reading by number and title only, and dispense with the second and third readings. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 69, 2022, a resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Trojan Technologies for the purchase of various apparatus involved in water purification for the Department of Public Utilities in an amount not to exceed $178,041 and declaring an emergency.
I move that Resolution 69, 2022 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Does somebody want to?
Yes, me.
Or a volunteer, we'll accept a volunteer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In Jan's absence, I've given the service committee report. The meeting was called to order at 5:30 p.m. by Chairperson Jan Materney. Committee members present were Jan Materney, Kevin Fuller, and myself. Also present were Bridget Cabot, City Administrator, and Brian Thomas, City Engineer. Citizens' concerns, Deborah Bourne of 125 East Front Street asked about the proposed bike path on Water Street. She also asked if this was approved by the local, state, or federal governments, and did the body approve the grant, and what was the deadline for the project. Mr. Thomas stated that the grant was applied for in 2009 or 2010 through TMACOG before Ms. Cabot or Mr. Thomas were part of the city. There is no deadline set for them. City Council did approve it as required by TMACOG. Approval of prior month's minutes, there were no objections and they were approved. Discuss qualifications for architectural and engineering and awarding bids. Ms. Cabot explained the city's selection process for architects and engineers, how they award bids, and what they follow for prevailing wages. Biannually, they will pre-qualify architects and engineers in various categories, include wastewater, sewer lines, buildings inspections, and more. Ms. Cabot added, Mr. Fuller asked about the city better protecting themselves and if there is anything they can do legislatively. Mr. Thomas answered that since he has been here, they have done review forms with contractors after each project, where he does an evaluation of the contractor and for them to review the city for improvements they could make. This helps to have things documented if the city has problems with a contractor. Mr. Fuller asked about tax liens. Ms. Cabot answered that one of the forms in the bid packet is regarding tax liens. Ms. Materney stated that the review form is a good idea, so we have justification. Ms. Cabot has not ran into many issues with contractors, and there has only been one issue that she is aware of in the 10 years she has been here. Typically, they take the lowest and best bid as long as they meet all of the other qualifications. Ms. Cabot has several questions that she will follow up with the law director on. Awarding pavement markings, Mr. Thomas stated that this is for touch-up of pavement markings that are faded throughout the city. They listed everything, but they will only be paid for how much they put down. The service department is working on some of the crosswalks around the schools currently. I asked about the bicycle arrows or sharrows, and Ms. Cabot stated that originally they were performed by the service department. Mr. Thomas added that he is working off of a list that he was given. Ms. Materney stated that they have to use calibrated machines so we know how much they put down. I asked about the state routes, and Mr. Thomas answered that sometimes ODOT will touch those up. There being no objections, the committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. A permission to purchase hydro seeder source well purchase. Ms. Cabot explained that the hydro seeder quote is $7,000 more than they budgeted for. The shallow roof project is $43,000 under budget and are asking to slide some of those dollars over to the hydro seeder. Ms. Cabot added that not only will the service department use it, but also the public utility department for landscape restorations in the right-of-way. I noted it will pay for itself in 4 years. Ms. Cabot added that the training comes with it when the machine is delivered. Mr. Fuller asked about this being more efficient than outsourcing with another company to do this. Ms. Cabot stated that she has not done that analysis, but waiting for a contractor to be available could be a problem. I stated that it is a good purchase and it will be a good piece of equipment to have. There being no objections, the committee agreed 3-0 to recommend this to City Council. Discussion of multi-use path master plan. Ms. Cabot shared the map that administration put together with all the multi-use paths, current and proposed. This went to the Recreation Committee and they wanted to share it with the Service Committee as well. I asked that if the path that Carronade could be connected over to Roachton, if there is a way to make that happen. Ms. Gabbett stated that they have had conversation with ODOT about this, but right now they have no appetite for that. The committee members thank Ms. Gabbett and Mr. Thomas. Downtown ADA improvement options, Ms. Gabbett and Mr. Thomas explained the two options to make ADA improvements on Louisiana Avenue. Option 1 is the least amount of work and money to accomplish the goal of meeting the ADA requirements. Option 2 requires spending more money, but it will make things look nicer aesthetically. The service committee will go more in depth at their next meeting. The meeting is scheduled with the meeting was scheduled with the business and tenant owners. It was held last week, and with the Ability Center attending that meeting as well to help answer questions. In other business, I thank Ms. Gabbett and the service department for the pavement in the alleys and the amazing improvements on that. Ms. Gabbett will pass that along to the service department. Some business owners asked about the Christmas lighting in uptown Perrysburg being underwhelming this past year compared to prior years. I asked if we could get back to where we were a few years ago. I also mentioned the overpass at Fort Meigs Road with graffiti. Ms. Gabbett stated that ODOT told the city to contact them and they will take care of that. Service has contacted ODOT, but Ms. Gabbett will follow up with Ron Isaacson. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned at 6:30 p.m. And I have two pieces of legislation. If there are no objections, I'll present them together. Okay, I would like to introduce resolutions 70 and 71-2022 and move that the rules be suspended to allow for the readings by number and title only and dispense with the second and third readings.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Resolution 70, 2022 is a resolution authorizing the award of the bid and agreement with Griffin Pavement Striping LLC in an amount not to exceed $110,738.88, which includes a contingency amount no greater than 5% for 2022 pavement marking project for the City of Perrysburg's Department of Public Service and declaring an emergency. Resolution 71, 2022, a resolution authorizing a purchase agreement with Finn All Seasons in an amount not to exceed $47,372.40 for the purchase of a Finn T60 trailer hydro seeder for the Department of Public Service and declaring an emergency.
I move that resolution 70 and 71-2022 be passed as emergency measures.
Second.
Discussion.
I do have one comment. I make this every time we have the pavement marking as someone who runs quite often. I know with the ODOT, when they've done some of their paint, if it's a wet weather, just recently rains, sometimes those crosswalks can get really slick. I'm hoping that we're going to probably put some more friction, like some gravel, some sand, or something they can.
Underneath the crosswalks that are projects funded with ODOT funding, we have to adhere to their standard specifications for that particular type of paint. I believe it's like a thermoplastic paint. But if we're just talking about regular crosswalks around town that were not part of those projects and we're reapplying, typically it's not that product. It's the product that is not as thick or as raised. So there is a mix out there.
That almost fallen a few times in some of those ODOTs. It's not fun.
And I believe Jan brought that up at the meeting as well.
Okay, good. I figure she would, because
yes.
her and I have brought that up numerous times. So.
Okay, yeah.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
The next service committee meeting is Wednesday, August 24th at 5:30 p.m. That's the end of the report.
Thank you, well done. Won't make it a habit, but any other business before council?
I know Councilman Coleman, he had requested to do an executive session with his personnel. So I know, I mentioned him just doing it the other business side of this. So hopefully relatively quick.
Yeah, does anybody else have any other business before?
Skip planning and zoning.
All right.
We have no report. We'll meet the first Wednesday Tuesday in September at 5:30.
You know, Tim, it's nice to know that I'm not the only one who skips.
Thanks for bringing it to my attention.
If there's no other business, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we move to executive session to discuss personnel issues as well as consider purchase of property.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Well.
Yes.